welcome along to my first bonus extra for Showy Ovaries. Basically, the brilliance that was Anjum Raman could not be contained within one episode, and I just felt that this little discussion on how her feminism manifests into activism and the origins of it was really interesting. So if you feel like having a listen, here's a little 5-minute extra for Anjum Raman's fabulousness. Is there anything else that you thought you might want to say about menopause or anything that we've talked about today?
I did look at some stuff when you were talking about feminism and my feminism and activism.
Oh, yes. The question was, how does your feminism manifest?
It is very much an activism. And even from a young age, because I try and think back when I first started having feminist thoughts. And I particularly remember that first time we went back to India when I was 12. And it was a very different cultural setting. And I went back into the village and village life. So you can imagine it was very different. But I just hated where women were at.
Right.
In that context. And so, I mean, I guess it just raised awareness. And then when I came back here, I saw everything else with fresh eyes and I was like, hey, stuff isn't great here either. And back in the 80s, and
yeah, right.
It was simple things like the right to work, to have a career, to use childcare without feeling guilty about abandoning your kids, the right to have ambitions, the right to be public and have a public voice. All of those things were still on the table to be fought for in the 80s.
And do you think that's why you waited a bit longer to do all of that, because you were coming to terms with that?
Yeah, no, I always had, so I was a real rebel, which is why I had so much difficulty in my 20s. As I told you, I was just pushing against and refusing to conform to all these expectations. I always wanted so much more.
Right.
And, so many of these gatherings, social gatherings, it's quite natural that the women go off and sit and talk and the men are in a separate space. And I think that even happens now a lot, that you kind of get this natural segregation. And I never wanted to sit with the women. I always wanted to go and sit with them. Like, they'd be talking about their recipes and their what's on sale and fabrics and all that. And I hate sewing, I hate cooking, I just wasn't interested. And so I was always a bit, non-conforming. And then in my 20s, I was always a rebel. And,
So I guess when you decided to just give into that fully and leave the life that you were supposed to be leading into the one that you wanted to lead is when you sort of found yourself?
Yeah, and that was all part of that mid-30s, started wearing a hijab, started going out. Because before that, I'd been pretty much just working in my own community, right? So I was still being an activist within my own community, making sure we had a women's voice at the national body and various other things to try and make space for women within our own community. But obviously with what happened in America then, and it impacted everyone, and then we had the Bali bombings and suddenly, we were in the spotlight, and it was like, okay, now we have to be more visible. Now we have to speak out. And so all of that was happening at the same time as I was also trying to get a divorce and all the things. So yeah,
and that was that quite hard to do within your community, or
it was harder than it should have been.
Right. Okay.
And that was cultural and not religious.
Right.
Yeah. It was quite hard.
Right, okay.
But it was freedom for me. It really was.
I'm sure.
Like that's when I went and joined a political party and did all this. Like, I would never been able to do all those things that I did, and I felt like I just.
That's why divorce is so great when you need to, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing. As a marriage celebrant, I fully endorse divorce because people used to be buried in different cemeteries. Such was the ridiculous shame of going through something like that. But people change, and there's no harm in that. And so you just acknowledge that you've grown in different directions and you want different things.
Well, yeah, and I think I was really lucky in terms of that it was my kids still had good contact with their father and with their father's family and all of those things. So as far getting the divorce was the hard part. But after the divorce wasn't as ugly as I've seen things get,
Right.
you know.
Fantastic.
And so it isn't, you know, when people come to, and after I got divorced, I get any number of people that would come to me and want to talk about it. And I have never once advocated for a person to leave.
Right.
You know, I don't do that. I talk them through what their issues are and what's right for them. And I'm like, I'm not going to tell you to leave. That's your decision. You have to think about it, and you have to think about your reasons and what they are and all of those things and weigh it all up. Because I know when I got divorced, I had my parents and family support here. Father was, as I said, the kids' fathers there were interested in their life, was involved, all of those things. Yeah, and everyone doesn't have that. And so to use me as an example isn't, you know, that might not be your situation. So you need to think about what's happening for you.
Right. Absolutely.
But of course, safety.
Yeah.
Safety is the big, like, we'll never compromise on
Yeah.
safety.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So there you have it. A little bonus extra from Anjum. Some really honest stuff there about some really big moments in her life and her feminism and how she helps others in her community, which I loved, but yet could not quite fit in her full episode, or it would have been 300 hours long. So I hope you enjoyed that very first bonus extra for Showy Ovaries, and we'll see you next time. Thanks. I've been Penny Ashton. See you again.